welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be an update on some orchids that I got 3 years ago. So 3 years ago I really expanded my orchid collection and I got these Cattleya seedlings and I got a couple of Dendrobiums from Carmela Orchids. I was very excited about it because up until that point I only grew Phalaenopsis and Oncidium orchids, so I never grew Cattleya orchids, and these orchids have been in my care for 3 years. Most of them have bloomed, and I'm excited to share how they've done for the last 3 years. I got them as seedlings. They were quite small. I was told they were 3 years from blooming. A couple of them bloomed within 1 year, and I have maybe 1 or 2 that haven't bloomed yet, and one that's bloomed for the first time, which is amazing. But I hope with this video I can show you how a seedling Cattleya does over time and give you an idea about how long it takes to get them to bloom. Sometimes from a tiny size to a bigger orchid, they tend to bloom sooner than you expect. So with this update video, I hope to show you the before and after so you guys can get an idea of how they did. So let's jump right into the before and afters. So the first orchid I want to show you is the Dendrobium Monosum Little Sweet Scent. So this one grew well. It has not given me many blooms, so it blooms once a year, but it only gives me like 1 or 2 blooms and kind of that's it. It is growing really nicely though for the last 3 years. This growth is gone, so I have to cut that off. I honestly haven't repotted this in over 2 years, so it's due now. The roots are pretty intense here, so I got to take care of that very soon. But this one's doing well. It's not my favorite. Like, the bloom is really cute, but I just find it just blooms once per year and it's kind of big. So I don't know if I want to have more anosmums just because it takes up quite a lot of real estate. And they also tend to hang down. I prop them up just because it helps me save some space, but over time they do tend to hang down and that takes a lot of space in my collection. But this one has grown well. It's not as vigorous as the white one, which I'm going to show you guys next. This one is the Dendrobium Monosum White. This one has grown really well. The canes are even taller than the Little Sweet Scent. And then when it blooms for me, it gives me a lot of flowers. So when it blooms, it smells like raspberries, which is really nice. But the flowers on the white or alba version, they tend to be a little bit wonky. So they're not super, super beautiful, I'd say. They're just a little off, but it smells amazing. As I mentioned with the Little Sweet Scent, this one blooms just once per year. It does take up some good real estate. I like to prop the canes up just so that they don't take up a ton of space. But I mean, I do like it. It's grown well. It gives me about a cane every single year. It started off quite small, but these tend to grow very easily. I believe they call them soft cane dendrobiums just because they're able to bend and kind of grow pretty easily. And I mean, I think I'm going to keep it. I'm just not going to get more Dendrobium monosmums, but this grew really well. Fragrance is amazing. So that's the best part of this orchid. And I guess I'm really happy with how it's grown. The roots also on that have grown really nicely. I repotted it sooner than the other one, so I don't think it needs a repot just yet, but it's grown really well in these last 3 years. Next up is the BLC Prada Green Deluxe, and as you can see, we have some buds here, which is amazing. So this Cattleya has grown really well. I wouldn't say it's the most vigorous of all of the Cattleyas that I have, but it's grown quite nicely. It bloomed for me once already, and it bloomed maybe about 6 months ago. It's I put it in semi-hydro. It's liking the setup. I have not touched it in about a year. And I'd say that, as I said, like, this one has grown well, but it's not the most vigorous out of all of them. It's not unvigorous, but it is a little bit slower than some of the other hybrids. You're going to see some other hybrids coming up that they just grew like crazy and I've had to divide them already. But I've been happy with this. The fragrance on the bloom is amazing. It smells like limes. It's very, very pretty. And I am definitely keeping this in my collection. I'm very happy with how it's grown. Okay, the next orchid is the BLC Ong Tai Naigo Cocoa Head. I don't even know how to say it, but This is one of the only orchids that did not bloom for me. So when I got it, it was very vigorous. I remember it had an incredible root system and I had to repot it first. It pushes out a ton of growths, so that's really nice. Like there's constant growths on it, but no blooms yet. So it's been 3 years. I'm hoping that it blooms for me this year. But otherwise, vegetatively, it's doing great. On the bloom front, no blooms just yet, but I mean, it's vigorous. I've had it in this pot for about a year. I expect it to bloom, and it's got a nice tight growth pattern, really. So, I mean, no complaints other than I hope to see blooms. It's been 3 years, so hopefully we will see them very soon. So no complaints about this. Just growing vegetatively. Okay, this next one is super, super vigorous. This one's the Patanera Hawaiian Charisma Hawaii. This was one of the first Cattleyas to bloom for me. I had blooms within a year of getting it, and it was still quite small when it bloomed. This is a very complex Cattleya hybrid. The bulbs look a little wrinkled, but I mean, it grows extremely vigorously, and I think it's just wrinkled because I transitioned it and I repotted it. From semi-hydro to organic, and when it was growing in semi-hydro, it was growing outside of the pot, so it wasn't getting the moisture that it needed. When I repotted it, it was so vigorous that I cut off like 4 or 5 of the back bulbs so I could make room for this in a 6-inch pot. And as you can see, there's 2 growths, one here and one right there. So those should bloom. I find that this blooms pretty much off every single growth. I've been very happy with this, and it's one of my favorite orchids, and I'm just really happy with how it's grown. It's literally one of the staples of my collection. I love this orchid. Okay, so this one is the Brassolaeliocattleya Volcano Queen, I believe. It is the BLC Volcano Delight Volcano Queen. This one took me 3 years to bloom, and this is the first time it blooms. I have 4 blooms, and I have a 3rd sheath that has buds in it. It is growing super vigorously. As you can see, it's got a bunch of new growths. When I repotted it last year, I accidentally broke the new growth off, so I know I set it back a little bit. As you can see, it's in a 7-inch pot, and it's gonna outgrow the pot. I'm gonna have to divide this already. But it took me 3 years to get blooms on this, so this one took its sweet time. These flowers are a little crowded here, but it smells amazing. This is very beautiful. I'm very happy with this orchid. It was worth the wait. I mean, 3 years, I would look at it, I'm like, when the heck are you gonna bloom? But yeah, this one literally took 3 years to bloom. As you could tell, it teased me with some sheaths that just dried up and didn't do anything. But yeah, it took its sweet time, but I hope it could be just like my Patanera Hawaiian Charisma Hawaii and just bloom every single time. It's just so beautiful. It's got like you can't see it that well in this light, but it's got a salmon color. Let me show you the other side. Here's the other side. These blooms have been open maybe about 10 days. Just gorgeous. I love it. Beautiful orchid. 3 years to bloom. This one up is the Brassavola Little Stars. So this one has grown really nicely. It's compact as well. Like it looks like a lot, but it grows quite tightly. It doesn't bloom that much for me, but vegetatively it has grown a lot. I think the season for this is, I want to say it blooms in the fall. I don't even remember. Or in the summer. It blooms like twice a year for me, and that's it. But when it blooms, the fragrance on these is amazing. Now I had to repot this. I made a little shorts video where I just uppotted it in another pot. I put it on Instagram, and I'm pretty sure I put it up here on YouTube. I'll put a link down below for you. But I basically had to put the pot in another pot. It just outgrew that pot insanely. It outgrew that pot so much that I had to just plop it in another one. The roots just grew through every single slotted groove on that old pot, so I just dumped it in here. This one has been vigorous. It's also one of my favorites. I'm definitely keeping this orchid. This one is the Brassavola Little Stars Yasuji Takasaki. I had another Brassavola Little Stars, and the fragrance was weak, so I gave that one away, but I kept this one. Really love this orchid. The next one in bloom is the maxillary atenifolia. It is in bloom right now, and it's grown really, really nicely. This one smells like coconuts. It's beautiful, and it was quite small when I got it, and this one just pretty much grows like a weed. It was difficult to get it to bloom. I will link a video for my maxillary atenifolias on how I got it to bloom, but this took a while. But it blooms like once a year. There's a season for it. But you'll notice, and I'm going to show you, if I get real close, you'll notice that all of the bulbs, you can see right there, they're a little bit wrinkled. And the reason for that is that it's in need of a repot. So this little pot here is a 4-inch pot, and there's just too many roots in there. So it needs new, fresh media. It needs a bigger pot. Otherwise, this orchid's going to be stressed out. And I tried to repot it last year, and I remember trying to get the root ball opened up, and it just wouldn't. So I just left it. I'm like, oh, I'll just give it another year. But I can't do that this year. I'm going to have to just bite the bullet. And if I need to damage the roots, they're going to have to get damaged. But this one is gorgeous. It's a little stressed out just because I have to repot it. So I wanted to share that. But otherwise, it's grown really nicely in these last 3 years. And, you know, when you get these orchids as seedlings, don't expect them to stay small. Some of them get really big. And this one takes up not a ton of space, but a decent amount. Like, it's just going to keep fanning out. Last one I have for you guys is the BLC Mary's Glory H&R. And I repotted this a couple of weeks ago. I moved it from semi-hydro to organic, and it was outgrowing its pot, which is why some of those canes are a little shriveled. This took about 1.5 to 2 years to bloom for the first time, but once it started blooming, it has continued to grow. You'll notice that it's not as big as the others, just because I cut off the back bulbs on it. It just got that big, so I just wanted to give it some decent room in the 6-inch pot so it could grow well, and I don't have to worry about getting another much larger pot too soon. But this one has grown nicely. The root system is amazing. I've repotted it 3 times since receiving it, basically every single year. It's vigorous, highly recommend it. Very nice Cattleya orchid with beautiful blooms and a really, really nice fragrance. So these last 3 years with this orchid has been really nice. So this one is the Patinera Jerry Refilled Paradise Fuchsia. This one has grown really nicely for me. It's nice and compact. It's probably one of the smallest Cattleyas in the whole haul. I repotted it into this deli container about a year ago. I have not taken off any back bulbs or anything. As you can tell, it's due for a repot soon, as we have a growth coming out here and we have some roots. But this one blooms often for me. It's got beautiful velvet petals. It's very similar to the Patinera Hawaiian Charisma Hawaii, except it's smaller. The growths are getting progressively a little larger, but not by much. As you can see, I just turned it around so you could get a better view. 3 years of growth, and it's still pretty tidy, pretty tight. It's something that if you grow indoors, it's something you can appreciate. It's not humongous. It's quite a compact Cattleya orchid. Fragrance is nice. The blooms are beautiful. It blooms off every growth almost. It's not as vigorous as the Patinera Hawaiian Charisma Hawaii, but it's close and it's quite lovely. This one is also one of my favorites just because it is reliable. Again, not as reliable as like one of my Richard Mueller hybrids that grow faster, but this one blooms maybe about 3 times per year. So there are 2 orchids that I don't have anymore. The Patinera Immaculate Heart Hilo Red and the Vanda Fuchs Ocean Spray. So the Patinera Immaculate Heart Hilo Red, that one was very similar to the to 2 orchids that I have from the same haul. So it was very similar to the Patinera Hawaiian Charisma Hawaii, and it was very similar to my Patinera Jerry Refilled Paradise Fuchsia. And I just decided to give it away just because it was quite repetitive. So my mom has that one and it's doing well. But otherwise that one bloomed for me already, and it was nice, just repetitive. The Vanda Fuchs Ocean Spray, that one was, it died because I underwatered it, unfortunately. I wish I was able to get it to bloom, but that's my fault for not taking care of it as well as I should have last summer. but I do find Cattleyas easier to grow in my environment than Vandas in general, which you guys know in my videos on the orchids that I've killed and stuff like that. Otherwise, I'm very happy with the orchids from this Fragrant haul. I think I'm going to keep all of them for now. I love the fragrance. I find that they're very nice. Maybe my least favorites are the Dendrobiums, just because they only bloom once per year and they tend to take up a lot of space, but I'm going to keep them anyway just because when they do bloom it's quite nice. And I do love the maxillary atenifolias, but they are going to get big on me, but they also only bloom once per year. With that said, the foliage is kind of nice, so I mean, it's something that I can look at, right? But we as orchid growers tend to grow for the blooms, not necessarily the foliage. And when you look at a Cattleya that's not blooming, it looks like crap. It doesn't look like crap, but you know, it's nothing. So we grow for the flowers, right? So I prioritize anything that's blooming quite often, things that are going to bloom multiple times per year. And if it only blooms once a year or twice a year, if it has an amazing fragrance, that does stick out for me because then I look forward to it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down below if you enjoy this kind of update video and if there's something you want to see. And I will catch you next time. Bye everyone.